Welcome, this is Najma Minhas with GVS Deep Dive. Trump just dropped a 50% tariff bomb on copper that could backfire across the entire global supply chain. And the outcome may be exactly the opposite of what the Donald wanted. China may be the biggest winner. Now, this is the most explosive tariff move in years. Copper future prices just jumped on the day, with the front month contracts moving by over 13% higher. It's the best one-day gain since 1989. Yes, copper, that metal you probably don't think much about, but it's everywhere. It's the lifeblood of modern industry in electric vehicles, smartphones, wiring, battery, defense systems, and construction. Trump's policy isn't just about tariffs as an economic policy to raise revenue, but rather it's about national security and possibly even a new kind of industrial warfare. Weapons in a fight over the control of future technologies and supply chains. Some analysts are calling it the start of the new critical minerals Cold War. He announced on Truth Social that the decision was made after he received a national security assessment, and he wrote, "I am announcing a 50% tariff on copper effective August 1st, 2025, after receiving a robust national security assessment." He went on to say that copper is necessary for a variety of industries, and he ended by saying, "Copper is the second most used material by the Department of Defense." He said he's implementing this on August 1st, which is less than 1 month away. The IMF is forecasting that copper demand will rise over 66% in the next 15 years. Trump says he's building a copper empire, but the copper isn't here in the United States. The smelters aren't here in the United States, and the time isn't here. So is this a bold strategic reset by Donald Trump for America's critical minerals, or is it a disastrous gamble that could backfire across the economy? Stay with me till the end while I try to break it all down for you.
Let's get more on this threatened tariff on copper.
Donald Trump's threat of a 50% tariff on copper imports.
I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
Looking at copper first, copper is not a rare earth material. I've done many vlogs on the importance of these and why the US is panicking over China's control of these materials. Do check those out. Copper is a base metal and is far more abundant and widely produced. Now, is copper a critical mineral then? Critical minerals are those that are essential to economic or national security and vulnerable to supply chain disruption. So increasingly, copper is, but it is by strategic designation. So, for example, the European Union and Canada have added copper to their critical minerals list due to its importance in green energy, solar, wind, EVs, and so on. We know Donald Trump doesn't believe in those, though. However, it's also important in the digital infrastructure and the defense systems. In an EV car, for example, copper is the second largest mineral used at 53 kg per vehicle, more than double than what is used in a conventional car. Copper wasn't designated as a critical material by the United States Geological Survey. In fact, the US Geological Survey ranks copper way down on the list of import threats. It isn't seen to be uranium. It isn't a rare earth. So why copper? And why now? Well, since 2023, United States copper lobbying groups have been urging for its inclusion in that list, which it was finally done in March 2025 this year. Why did they want to include it as a critical mineral? Because when you're on that list, you get fast-track permits under what is called Fast 41. You can also get government grants, and so on. Representative Melanie Stansbury from New Mexico, who has opposed the bill, said, "There's been a sustained effort going back decades by the mining industry to pass legislation to reclassify copper as a way to get those lands and to waive environmental and tribal protections." It's absolutely a play of the copper industry. So it's not as innocent as it all looks. Industries who want protectionism have realized the easiest way is to declare China the bogeyman and so on. So is this a national security emergency, or is it really a political weapon dressed up as protectionism? Ever since Trump came into office and talked of taking control of Greenland,
We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't.
he has been focused on increasing US independence with respect to rare earths and critical minerals. Copper is one focus of his domestic minerals policy. In February 2025, Trump issued an executive order invoking Section 232, which basically kicks off a national security investigation into US dependence on imported copper. This is the same law that he used for steel and aluminum in his first term as well. By March, he doubled down with a second executive order using the Defense Production Act to fast-track new mining and smelting projects. It cuts through red tape and it offers incentives for domestic copper producers. Then on July the 8th, this last week, he made the big move, a 50% tariff on all copper imports, which is going to be effective August the 1st. Trump said it's necessary to build a dominant copper industry and reduce dependency on foreign powers, especially China and South America. The US mining CEOs obviously loved it. Robert Friedland, one of the biggest names out there in the industry, called it an intelligent move that will wake up people. However, concern is growing, particularly amongst US manufacturers. Construction companies are already warning of delays. Auto executives say battery production could slow down. Data centers, which are at the heart of the AI economy, are reassessing expansion plans. It's not just going to hit those corporate balance sheets. Ultimately, those costs will be passed on to the consumer, meaning much more inflation. Now, for a nation that imports the majority of its refined copper, this policy represents a substantial cost burden with far-reaching implications for the industry. Many analysts see that planned 50% tariff on copper imports as the biggest own goal by the US President Donald Trump in this ongoing trade war with the rest of the world. At the same time, the term critical minerals has become so broadly applied that it risks losing any analytical value. Virtually every metal now qualifies. What is urgently needed is a much more precise framework, one that clearly differentiates between materials that are truly indispensable to national security and those that are simply important to economic activity. Simply put, a critical mineral is one that a country relies on but cannot reliably produce or secure on its own. It's not just about scarcity, it's about vulnerability. You lack sufficient domestic reserves and your closest allies don't have enough either, and you don't control enough of the supply chain to guarantee access when it matters most. Chile has the largest world copper reserves and by far produces the most as well, followed by Peru and Congo. And you may recently remember that I discussed the US peace deal there and what that was actually all about. The United States in 2024 mined an estimated 1.1 million tons of copper and exported around a third of that in primary unrefined form. It imports around 810 tons. Nearly all of them are refined. Trump's executive order accurately refers to China as the world's leading refiner of copper, with over half of the world's smelting capacity. China, however, does not directly factor into United States supplies. 2/3 of US imports of refined copper actually come from Chile, around 65% of these. That's then followed by Canada at 17%, Mexico at 9%, and 6% comes from Peru. The United States Geological Survey's own list shows that copper's way down on the US list of net import reliance, as I mentioned earlier. So how smart is this policy? Well, copper is critical for the energy transition. The solar panels, the EVs, the grids, it's used in high-tech defense systems. Relying on imports from politically unstable or adversarial regions is a serious risk for any country. And reducing that dependency could be a smart move, but only if the United States views Chile, Canada, Mexico, or Peru as adversarial countries and not as allies. Turning away from reliable allies like Canada, Chile, and so on doesn't make America safer. It makes it slower, more expensive, and ultimately more vulnerable. Strategic partnerships are force multipliers. Abandoning them is basically giving a gift to your competitors. Trump has used tariffs as bargaining chips before, whether it was in steel, aluminum. So this copper move might be about sending a signal to trade partners and multinational firms, either support US industry or risk being shut out of the US market. But that makes no sense. Chile and Peru are minuscule trading partners when it comes to US trade with them. The United States runs a small trade surplus with Peru, around $2 billion, and a small trade deficit with Chile of less than $2 billion. Peru's copper industry is overwhelmingly controlled by Western multinationals, and large Western companies operate in Chile as well. All of these are force multipliers for the United States. And the whole bringing back jobs to America. The tariffs, combined with fast-track permitting and incentives, could spark a wave of new investment in US mining and refining. If American firms can rebuild that domestic capacity, the mines, the smelters, and the recycling infrastructure, yeah, maybe it could create a few thousand jobs and lay this groundwork for this so-called American industrial revival. If is the key point here. But now let's talk about the risks, and there are a lot of them. First, let's talk about the risks, and there are a lot of them. First, prices will go up fast. A 50% import tariff means US manufacturers in auto, construction, electronics will pay significantly more for copper. And then guess what? Their end product will cost more. It will become uncompetitive in the global market. It will become expensive in the domestic market, the domestic consumer will pay more. That cost doesn't just stay on the balance sheet. It will be passed to the consumer in the form of higher prices. That means inflation at a time when the Fed is still trying to keep things stable, and Donald Trump keeps telling Jerome Powell to reduce interest rates. And he's not doing it because he's worried about what the implications of tariff rates will be. In the worst case scenario, some manufacturers could cut jobs or delay investments to deal with these rising costs. The US has roughly 10,000 copper mining jobs versus 500,000 in copper-using industries. Historically, as we saw with the steel tariffs, every mining job that they gained risks displacing 3 to 4 manufacturing jobs. So when Trump says this will rebuild American industry, the question very quickly becomes, which industry and at what cost? Second, US capacity can't fill the gap, not yet at least. Even with Trump's executive orders to fast-track mining and smelting, new capacity takes years, sometimes a decade or more. That's not particularly a strategy, it's a gamble. Often 5 to 7 years just to expand the existing smelters, and 12 years to build a new mine, going from the greenfield site to producing copper. There are a couple of mines in the pipeline, but they're being blocked by the court or for environmental reasons. The contested Resolution copper project at Oak Flat in central Arizona, which is believed to be the world's third biggest deposit of copper ore, was the site of a battle between locals who want the mine for economic development and the native Apaches who consider the land sacred. Similarly, another planned $1.7 billion twin metals mine is being obstructed by environmental groups which say that it poses unacceptable risks in one of Minnesota's federally designated wilderness areas. The US simply doesn't have the infrastructure right now to process enough copper to meet its own demand. And if imports dry up, it's going to be in big trouble. So the US economy really needs Trump to do a taco here. The policy is likely to see another blowback. Key allies like Canada, Chile, Mexico, Australia, which are some of the United States' biggest copper suppliers, well, some of them are already talking about retaliatory tariffs, challenging the United States at the WTO as well, or even shifting their copper exports to another country who wants them, to China or to Asia or Europe. Now, this could backfire on the United States, both economically and diplomatically. Globally, the move is shaking up the copper trade. If the US pulls back from imports, those copper supplies will have to get redirected somewhere else, most likely China, which already dominates the global copper refining. Global copper traders are offering cargoes to Chinese buyers as they are already looking to offload the metal, which is no longer going to be able to reach the United States before President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline hits. The Yangshan copper premium, which is a benchmark for what Chinese buyers pay above the London Metal Exchange for copper, which is still outside the country, has fallen by 5% to $62. Now, this is because suppliers are desperate to get a home for that metal which has left the ship. A lot more of these suppliers are going to go to China because it offers them long-term investment guarantee demand and zero political grandstanding. And that could increase China's influence over the pricing and supply of copper. Ironically, the very thing that Donald Trump was trying to avoid. At the last BRICS summit, we know that Russia proposed a new grain and metals exchange, which is specifically designed to bypass Western markets in the US dollar as well. If copper starts flowing through those channels, the United States is not just going to lose supply, it's going to lose price-setting power as well. And that's the real risk by weaponizing tariffs. America may be forcing the rest of the world to build these alternatives much faster. Now, there is some hope. Section 232 is supposed to be used in emergencies that directly threaten national security, like war. Using it for industrial policy may be seen as legally shaky, and it's likely to be challenged in both US courts and international tribunals. So what do you think? Is Trump's copper tariff the beginning of America's next industrial revolution? Is he on the right track? Or do you think it's just a political stunt that could blow up the economy? And if you haven't seen my video on the Congo minerals deal or the Iran-Beidou shift, I will link them below because this story is far bigger than just copper. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please hit like, subscribe, and share the video. Have a great day.